Now, a year ago at this time,
Yeah.
Kyler Murray was the talk of the scouting combine. From afar, what you saw him do, I know Offensive Rookie of the Year is one thing, but what did you see when you watched him on Sundays this past year?
Massive progress from the start to the finish. And by the way, it was good from the beginning, right? I mean, first game ever and orchestrates was a 16-point come-from-behind tie. We called it a come-from-behind tie. But down 24-6, 24-8 in the fourth quarter. I'm like, even that right there, I mean, that's a good not a perfect, but a good start. But by the end of the season, I thought there were a couple of things. First of all, it felt like Cliff Kingsbury was kind of unlocking Kyler. We saw more design runs. We saw more confidence in the scrambles. But the accuracy from Kyler should never have been a question coming into the season. But the precision in which he was throwing the football was spectacular. And I remember learning this in scouting, and I always talk about Kurt Warner with this. Completion percentage tells the story in one way. Complete 65% of your passes. And you want to probably be above, at least two-thirds. Or two-thirds and above is a very good number. But placement of the football is a whole nother part of the equation, right? If a guy is running an in-breaking route and you put it, 6 inches or 18 inches in front of him, he has a chance to continue that path. He's probably going to catch it and add some yak. If you put it on his back hip, it's Larry Fitzgerald. He'll probably still catch it, but the opportunity to run the football or run with the football after that is diminished. He's got to change, open up his hips, etc. Kyler seemed to show a lot of that, not just accuracy in terms of completion percentage, but accuracy in terms of ball placement. And, Larry is a class act, and I think Larry Fitzgerald will almost always say the right thing. But I took to heart what he talked about when he talked about how this was one of the most enjoyable, if not the most enjoyable season of his career. It says a lot about the energy, and I think a lot of it stems from Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury.
Moving forward, there's a school of thought that now with the draft, free agency, that you go all in as far as putting pieces around Kyler Murray. Yeah, you have to address the defense and the shortcomings there, but maybe you get that wide receiver and maybe another offensive tackle with the draft, and maybe even in free agency. Sure. Where do you fall along the lines, because you hope, your franchise quarterback?
So last April we talked about the Cardinals investing a second, a fourth, and a sixth round pick on wide receivers, right? If I'm not mistaken, obviously Andy Isabella, part of the trade of Josh Rosen, the pick they used there. I believe it was the pick they used in the Josh Rosen trade. And then was Hakeem Butler was a fourth round.
Correct.
And then was a Keyshawn Johnson the sixth, right? So 2, 4, and 6, and you're saying to yourself, all right, they've just established a pipeline. And a year later, people are saying, hey, do we have to give up on the wide receiver spot? No, you mean there's one staff that knows how much progress these guys made. And I understand that, injuries, especially Hakeem, obviously limited him this year. Andy did not play a ton this past year. I know everybody knows that. Had 189-yard touchdown, is that what it was? But Cliff Kingsbury and his staff knows, all right, here are the reasons why the snaps weren't where people necessarily expected them to be or wanted them to be, and here are the reasons why they can be at that level in 2020. So yes, it's a reasonable expectation that can always add more wide receiver depth, but maybe these guys, maybe they just needed it. Coaches will always tell you, and GMs will tell you, that the best chance for growth in the NFL is between a first and second year. And so the problem is that guys like Kyler are so prodigious that people say, Kyler just rookie of the year, like, why isn't everybody else up to speed? Well, look at DJ Humphries. How many snaps did he play as rookie? Same number as me, right? 0.
Exactly. All of us.
And now he's a 3-year handsomely paid left tackle. Really, really good year last year, right? And it's a building block for this team. And Steve Keim, that's a legit stud he finds, and it's not easy to find offensive linemen, period. And to get him was pick 24. DJ Humphries was that's hard to do. It's one thing if you're picking 4th, right? Picking 24 to find a good player, it takes some time. So I'm not, you can't guarantee anything, but what if a year from now, Andy or Hakeem or Keyshawn is, an every down player, and you're saying, the light just needs a year to go on.
All right, so we look at the offensive line, and, they obviously made major progress under Sean Kugler. I think Humphries would be the first to tell you. Pugh was able to stay healthy. Shipley, thought process, let's go with a veteran with a rookie quarterback.
Yep.
Sweezy, he played pretty much every snap.
Every snap player, right? Yeah.
And then Justin Murray kind of bailed him out a little bit when Marcus Gilbert went down.
Yep.
So obviously the Cardinals don't have a number 1 wide receiver on the roster. I mean, you can make a case for Kirk. Larry's more of a possession guy, put up numbers. To me, since the draft is so deep at wide receiver, No, if Derek Brown's there, I think that would be the pick. They need a difference maker in that front seven.
I'd agree
with
on that,
Chandler
yeah.
and with Patrick coming back and Alford and Byron Murphy. But offensive line, to me, you have to address that to keep him upright because, 49 sacks last year, half are on him. Now, a lot in the first half or first quarter of the season, and then it tailed off. So, offensive line, there are 4 or 5 guys that can be an option at 8. What are your thoughts?
Well, they're all good. Andrew Thomas, Georgia, Tristan, we've got Jedrick Wills from Alabama, Tristan Wirfs from Iowa, amongst the names we're always talking about. There are a lot of good offensive linemen in this year's class. I feel like we devalue sometimes right tackles. It's just not the splashy tackle spot, but it's really important. We've seen guys get paid a lot of money now to play right tackle at a high level. Trent Brown, Raiders last year, signs the richest contract ever for an offensive tackle, plays right tackle for them. It's important. I think the board shakes out actually a pretty good spot for the Cardinals at 8 right now. So you mentioned offensive tackle, defensive line, wide receiver being 3 needs. Sounds like they're about, pretty good supply and demand equation for them, given who's available. So too early. We're still 2 months away from the draft, or close to 2 months away from the draft. Too early to say, but it seems like the board is sort of aligns with what they might need here.
Cardinals right now only have 6 draft picks.
Sure.
A year ago they had 11.
Yep.
To get more picks, you'd have to trade out potentially of number 8. And how do you, if you're sitting in that GM seat, weigh, okay, maybe it's the number 1 wide receiver, maybe the number 1 offensive tackle versus dropping back, and now you've got the second best or third best at those positions that you're looking at.
So I think there's one position in football that I compare quarterbacks to real estate, not to commoditize an individual, but the sense that there may be 6 homes available outside of Lucas Oil Stadium here in Indianapolis, and you might like home A, you might like home B, and I might like home C, and I would never ever pay for home A or home B, even if they all cost the same amount, right? So quarterbacks, I don't know that if Steve had not been convinced that Kyler was a franchise-altering guy last year, then I don't care if he was regarded as a top quarterback prospect. You can't invest in him, right? Now, obviously, he did, and it's already been paid off with a spectacular rookie season. I think wide receivers can be a little bit different. You can like a lot of guys comparably and say, hey, we really like this guy at 8, but we don't mind. We would love this guy at 12 plus 2 extra picks or something. So I think it's a little bit different than the quarterback equation this year because there's so much wide receiver depth. If we advance to a stage where they're honing in on a wide receiver in the draft, I can be flexible with that 8th pick.
All right. You've done a great job detailing the free agency, which is coming up for the draft.
Sure.
Besides, teams have the option of putting the tag, whether it's transition or franchise tag. So usually teams want to re-sign their own players.
Yep.
They drafted them, especially if somebody's out that 5th-year option. Give me a couple guys you think that, quote, are going to get overpaid just based on salary cap space and looking for a new home.
Good question. Top of the wide receiver market in free agency this year is not as deep as it was last year. Amari Cooper has a chance to really break the bank, whether it's retaining or staying with the Cowboys or going elsewhere. We'll see how the CBA and the potential for 2 tags shakes out. Sounds like the Cowboys probably won't be able to use 2 tags. But a guy like Robbie Anderson's a player that's really talented. But you may say, wherever he signs, he may be one of those guys that and you should always be paying for future performance, not past production.
Correct.
So he might be a guy that maybe you say to yourself, for example, if the number is big, you may say, just remind yourself, you're not paying for what he's done, you're paying for what he can do. But I don't think guys are overpaid. I don't view guys as they're getting what they earn. You're getting what someone's willing to pay you. So,
absolutely.
And they should go do that. They only have so many chances to be, free agents on the open market.
Get us out with this on your thoughts on this week.
Yeah.
Things are a little bit different.
Sure. Yeah.
GMs, head coaches, creatures of habit.
Yeah.
How do you think this week will go with now everything workout-wise in prime time?
Will be really interesting. One thing I keep asking to people is just, if in previous years, sometimes the workout to the last thing guys did, and it was the only thing they did on that particular day. Well, now you've got interviews all day before a workout that night. Is your head fully invested, or can it be as invested in those interviews just hours before you're working out, or are you absent-minded for a little bit of these? The answer is that some guys will be completely unbothered by it and it'll be fine. But just I'll be interested to see how the interview process maybe changes for these guys a little bit. And, these guys are used to playing games at night. Yeah. So for them, this will be an opportunity to compete at night, and that'll be good. I'm sure a lot of people will watch it because people love themselves some football. And as do I. Yeah. As do all of us.
Appreciate you sitting down with us once again here on Cards Covered 2. It's always a pleasure, and look forward to seeing you on ESPN.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it very much.